Good morning, students. I, Sarita Goyal, your bio teacher, today going to start with new topic, that is respiration of chapter 6, life process. Students, I have taken the topic respiration but not nutrition. This is so because in some section nutrition has been completed and in some section it is incomplete. We'll complete this when we are going to meet in the class in school, or I will take this topic again at the end of the chapter. Before discussing respiration, let us know what is breathing, or what is the difference between breathing and respiration. As you know, breathing is intake of oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. How you will come to know that you have breathed out carbon dioxide. For this, you can do a simple activity. In your book, it is activity 6.4. If you breathe out carbon dioxide in lime water in a test tube which is containing lime water, just to breathe out carbon dioxide. When you breathe out the air from your mouth, what you'll find? You'll find that lime water turns milky. That shows that the whatever you have breathed out that contains carbon dioxide. This is a physical process. The main difference between breathing and respiration. You know what is respiration? In simple terms, we called respiration is breaking down of the food molecule. It is a chemical process because the chemical reaction has taken place. So first difference between breathing and respiration is that breathing is a physical process, whereas respiration is a chemical process. In your assignment, you can see that I have given you first question as what is breathing. So what is breathing? It is intake of oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. In second question, I have given you how will you come to know about that you have breathed out carbon dioxide. For this, you have to do activity 6.4. Third question is what is respiration? I have given you the answer. It is process in which food is oxidized. What do you mean by oxidized? Breaking down of food molecules to release energy. That is called respiration. Now my fourth question is difference between breathing and respiration, which I am discussing now. Breathing, as I told you right now, that it is a physical process. Why it is a physical process? Because no chemical reaction takes place. It is just giving out carbon dioxide and taking out oxygen. Why and how we are not discussing here, right? And whereas respiration is a chemical process because breaking down of food molecules takes place. So it involves a chemical reaction. Second point is breathing is endothermic process. It absorbs energy. Whatever the work we do, we absorb energy. Then only we are able to do. Whereas respiration, as in the definition, it releases energy. So it is an exothermic process. Third, now we are going to discuss that oxidation about respiration in detail. We have talked about breathing. Why we have discussed breathing? Because breathing is the first step of respiration, right? Now, when we are talking about respiration, we say that it oxidizes the food to release energy. But how? That we have not studied yet. We are going to study the respiration process in detail. How we are going to study? What is the basic idea? Now, this respiration, that we have diverse organisms, we have lots of organisms, varieties of organisms, and they all use different ways. Why? Because their respiratory organs are different. For example, if I am talking about fish, they breathe through lungs. If I'm talking about um, frog, it breathes out through skin. Human beings through lungs. And if you are talking about cockroach, it breathes through trachea. It is an air cavities. Some of the we human beings have some special organs. Some of the organisms breathe through all the body parts which are in the contact with the air. Now, since we are having diverse organisms, they breathe differently. Some of them breathe with the help of oxygen, in the presence of oxygen, and some of them breathe without oxygen. And these two processes are called aerobic and anaerobic. Now, my fifth question is difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Before talking in detail how the organism breathe, let us discuss about aerobic and anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, the in aerobic respiration, it occurs in the presence of oxygen. That is, the animals respire in the presence of oxygen. In anaerobic process, it takes place in the absence or lack. Lack means less amount. Lack of oxygen. Second difference, large amount of energy is released in case of aerobic respiration. Why is that so? Because complete oxidation of food takes place. That means all the food break down completely. In anaerobic respiration, less amount of energy released because less incomplete oxidation of food takes place. Aerobic respiration takes place in mitochondria. You know that mitochondria is called powerhouse of the cell. You have already studied in your 9th class and even in 8th class also. That mitochondria is called powerhouse of the cell. Why is it so? Because breaking down of food particles takes place in mitochondria to release energy. So it is known as powerhouse of the cell. Whereas anaerobic respiration takes place in your yeast cells as well as muscles tissue. In yeast cell, it takes place in the absence of oxygen and that process is called fermentation. In muscle cells, it takes place in the less amount of oxygen. You have seen when you go to some hill stations, you will feel pain in your legs after climbing it that. Why is that so? Because when we climb, at a higher altitude, there is less amount of oxygen. So that again I am taking in detail further also. Because at the high altitude, less amount of oxygen is available and you won't get proper oxygen. So in absence of oxygen, in the lack of oxygen, a product called lactic acid that get deposited in your legs and you will feel somewhat hard, and that is due to the presence of lactic acid. So that is also called formation of muscle cramps. That is why you feel pain there, because complete oxidation of food will not takes place. So that is the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now this is assignment also. So please listen all the differences and you note down your notebook. Right? Now coming to the topic, as I told you, there are diverse organisms. We have lots of varieties of organisms. So they breathe down in different ways. For this, I am coming to the next page. That is, I have marked here question number 6. That is of your box question also. Question number 2 of page 105. It is an important question. Very much important questions. So listen carefully. So what is the first step in respiration process? As I told you, first step is the breathing. That is taking of oxygen. And why we are taking oxygen? Normally, if I ask students that why is oxygen necessary, you all will say, ma'am, for surviving, for living. But what is the real answer of that? That is why we take oxygen, because in the oxygen helps in breaking down of food molecules in the mitochondria. Right? So, first step of breaking down glucose in various pathways. This this flow chart is very simple, given in your notebook. You can learn, you can write from this. If you write this flow chart, it is more than sufficient. Anyway, in the previous paragraph, it is given in the sentence also. But instead of writing sentences, I will prefer that you learn like this, the chart which is given in your notebook. I have already marked question number 6, that is of your box question of page 105. Second question number 2 of page number 105. Now what happens? This chain is actually 10 steps chain, but which is not given in detail at your level. So we are talking about main points. If you go to +1, you are going to and read this chain completing the 10 steps, and this process is called glycolysis also, right? So what is the first step? Whatever food we are eating, it is stored in the form of glucose, as you have already learned in your topic nutrition. Now this glucose is 6 carbon molecule. What is the formula of glucose? You know that C6H12O6. So this glucose contains 6 carbon molecules. Now this 6 carbon molecules, glucose is going to convert in the 2 steps. Each steps have 3 carbon molecule plus energy, and we call it as pyruvate. And this process takes place in cytoplasm. Clear? So this process takes place in cytoplasm. That is, breaking down of glucose into pyruvate takes place in cytoplasm, which is present in our cell. Clear? Now, this is common for all the organism, whether it is fish or any organism. This is common, right? Now, this pyruvate further broken down by various organisms in different ways. What are those different ways? One, in the absence of oxygen, in the lack of oxygen, and in the presence of oxygen. So, in the absence of oxygen, that takes place in the yeast cell. As I told you earlier, this process is called fermentation, right? As you have seen, you will keep batter of flour for idli and dosa for fermentation. So that is the breaking down of that food particles in the different forms. What are those forms? In the absence of oxygen, this pyruvate breaks down into ethanol. This ethanol is a carbon compound which you are going to study in detail in chapter number 4 of chemistry. This ethanol is the formula is C2H5OH. So this is carbon 2 molecules. We are breaking 3 carbon molecules. Remember that pyruvate contains 3 carbon molecules. When we are breaking this pyruvate in the absence of oxygen, it converts into ethanol and carbon dioxide and energy. Now this ethanol is 2 carbon molecule and carbon dioxide is 1 carbon molecule. So in that way, you are getting 3 carbon molecule, breaking 3 carbon molecules into 2 compounds, right? And energy is released. Of course, there is incomplete oxidation of foods, so this energy released will be in the less quantity. Clear? Now, coming to the second step, that is lack of oxygen, that takes place in our muscle cells, right? As I discussed you about muscle cramps, I am coming to that point. Now, when the pyruvate breaks down, again it can break down in the presence of, in the less quantity of oxygen in our muscle cells which are present in our body. So what will be the product of this pyruvate? It is lactic acid, which is 3 carbon molecules, and energy will be released. So energy, whatever the energy will be released, again it is in less quantity because of lack of oxygen. And this lactic acid, as I told you, get deposited in our legs. When we climb to the higher altitudes, we require more and more oxygen, more and more energy. So we breathe there faster also to get more amount of energy. And this in that quantity of oxygen, and this pyruvate gets broken down. Now this lactic acid is deposit, and it is uh, in our muscles of legs. So that is why we feel very pain, and this is called cramps. That means whenever you climb to the higher altitudes, muscle cramps will be formed. Why? Because of the deposition of lactic acid. Clear? Now coming to the last step of this breaking down of glucose, that is in the presence of oxygen, and this process takes place in mitochondria. You all know that mitochondria is powerhouse of the cell, which I have already studied. The energy is released in the form of ATP, right? Now in this mitochondria, this pyruvate broken down completely in carbon dioxide, water, and large amount of energy, which will use in the for various purposes, right? So the energy is released in the form of ATP. As you know that ATP is the energy currency of the cell, which is used as a fuel. What do you mean by fuel? Fuel means that is not, we are not burning. Actually, whatever the process we are doing, we are getting energy. So what we are getting, as we get the energy from fuel, so we can say that ATP is used as this fuel, which further broke down to giving rise of fixed amount of energy to, fixed amount of energy to do all the reactions in our body. Now, how this ATP is formed in our body? By converting from ADP and inorganic phosphate. So this ADP and phosphate, they combine together to form ATP. This ATP is the energy currency of the cell, and we use for many purposes, like the battery. If you consider the example of battery that can be used for to obtain mechanical energy, light energy, electrical energy, and so on. Similarly, ATP is used in the conduction of muscles, formation of proteins, conductions of nervous impulses, and many other activities. Have you followed this? So this is very much important question, breaking down of glucose by various pathways. Normally, this question occur in 3 marks also. Sometimes we'll get in 1 mark also, in 2 marks also, right? In 3. How we'll get 1 marks? We can ask you only the first step of this flow chart, or second, or we can ask you 2 steps. So this question normally we get in the examination, either in the 1 marks, or in the 2 marks, or in the 3 marks. So you have to go through this question very properly, listen carefully again and again, and follow this, right? Now coming to the next topic of this respiration. Now, how the exchange of gases takes place? As you know, in plants it takes place through stomata, right? And this stomata, they open, they release during daytime, during photosynthesis, they take carbon dioxide and release oxygen. But in the nighttime, their major eliminating compound is element is oxygen. Carbon dioxide. But in daytime, it is carbon dioxide, right? How this exchange of gases takes place? By the process of diffusion. In plants, normally the exchange of gases takes place diffusion, or if the plants are large, it takes place through transpiration also, right? So now exchange of gases takes place by diffusion, and this can go to the cells or away from them, in and out of the air. The direction of diffusion. Now in plants, the direction of diffusion depends upon the environmental conditions. If the conditions are hot, so for example, as I spoke in a nutrition topic also, that if the days are hot, for example, desert plants I am taking, they exchanges of gases takes place during night time, because if the stomata is open frequently, lots of during exchange, I can say that during exchange of gases, water also transfer. So lots of water will transfer, that will harm the plants. So this is reverse in case of desert plants, right? So during day, if I am talking about plants, during daytime, oxygen is a eliminating element, whereas during night time, carbon dioxide is the release. Now you think that when the plants are releasing carbon dioxide at night time, so, and they are using carbon dioxide for photosynthesis also, but the quantity which they are eliminating is less than what they are observing in daytime. So we need not worry about this. Now coming to the question number 7, that is question number 1 of page 105, that is, what advantages over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have with regard to obtaining oxygen for respiration? That means, what is the difference between aquatic and terrestrial animals? What advantage terrestrial animal have? As you all know that aquatic organism, they have to remain in water. So they are getting the oxygen, right? I'm talking about the fish now, right? Fish, in the respiratory organ of fish is gill. Clear? The breathing organ is gill. So now this, they take the oxygen from the water. Now since they have to take oxygen which is dissolved in the water, so they breathe faster. Rate of breathing in aquatic organism is much faster than terrestrial animal. That is one of the advantage of terrestrial animal, because terrestrial animal need not to be breathe faster. Why they need not to be breathe faster? Because they have to take oxygen from the atmosphere, right? And that is much easier. And moreover, second point is, in water the amount of oxygen is less, dissolved oxygen is less. You have seen fishes opening mouth again and again. That doesn't mean that they are drinking the water, right? They are taking the oxygen from the water through the mouth to the gills. Clear? They are taking the oxygen from the mouth, right? So that is why you'll see that you always see that the fishes are opening mouth again and again. Don't think that they are drinking water, right? Because the rate of oxygen, the oxygen which is dissolved in water, is fairly low as compared to the oxygen dissolved in atmosphere. So that is why, that is the most advantage for terrestrial animal. They do not breathe faster as aquatic animals. Clear? This is your 7th question of assignment, but it is the question number 1 of page 105. I mark the answers also. You can convert in the points, and even I am giving you notes also. Whichever you feel, if you want to write in your own words, you can write no, huh, right? Now, coming to the next. When we are talking of the different respiratory organs of different organisms, as I told you, fish breathe through lungs, through gills, human beings breathe through lungs, and frog breathe through skin, cockroach breathe through air tubes, that is called trachea. So their structures are no doubt quite different, but some common features are present in their organs. They are different organs. In spite of that, they have common features. What is that? Similar. I have given you question number 8 in your assignment. That is similarity in the structure of respiratory organs of various organisms. Make the correction, right? I can't make now, but you can do, instead of writing various organs, you write various organisms. If I can, I'll do the correction also. Okay. Now, various similarity in the structure of respiratory organs of various organisms. What are those similarity? First point, all these organs have a structure that increase the surface area. You know that we are having alveoli. In that I am going to speak later on also in detail. These alveoli, how they are present in our lung? They are in the bunches, just like grapes bunch. You have seen the bunch of grape, right? In a bunch, you will might find many grapes, or it is because it is a balloonized structure, right? So they are present in our, they occupy less surface area, but they are present in more quantity, so they increase the absorbing surface area. I can tell that they increase the absorbing surface area for oxygen, right? So that is first similarity, that these organs have a structure like that have that increases the surface area in less area, right? Suppose if you are holding a thread, if you are expanding, it will occupy more surface area. But if you fold it, it occupy less surface area. So in that way, we are having the structure. These all respiratory organs have more surface area for absorbing more oxygen in less space. Right? Clear? Now, these are all in the contact with the oxygen rich atmosphere. In a case, suppose I am talking about my lungs, right? In my lungs, they are connected with they have contact with the blood vessels, right? Which carry oxygen, which carry blood, and they take the oxygen from the alveoli and give out carbon dioxide. That in that we are going to explain, that I am taking afterwards also. Now, second, this surface area is very, you can see here, I am putting my cursor. This surface area is very fine and delicate, of course, because exchange of gases has to take place quickly, very, very quickly. So this surface area is very fine. Fine means don't think that good, acha. It is fine means thin, very, very thin. We call it as fine. Clear? It is this surface is very fine. That means very, very thin. And of course, when it is thin, it is delicate also. So because this is very fine and delicate, it has to be protected. So where it is placed? It is placed within the body. Right? This is your second similarity in the structure of respiratory organs of various organisms. Now come to the third point. That means there is a mechanism of moving the air in out of this area where the oxygen is absorbed. Now when we are taking oxygen inside, it should move. Where it should move? To the blood. Where? In the blood vessels, which are in the contact with the alveoli, right? And when the oxygen goes to the alveoli, from alveoli to the blood vessels, at the same time the carbon dioxide comes to the alveoli, and which will remove out. That I am going to my next section. How? Clear? So these are all the similarity of the respiratory organs of various organisms. So please, instead of this organ, write here organism. Now, next is how our respiratory system works. Very important topic. You know that you should know that how our respiratory system works. Now, you know that we all breathe through nostrils. We are talking about now respiratory system in human being. I am discussing in detail. Please listen carefully and think what we are doing while breathing. Though sometimes it won't feel as I'm telling you, because we are habitual for that. So we take oxygen through our nostrils. Before it reaches to the lungs, it has to do a lot of work. So whatever the oxygen we are taking in the nostrils, that is filtered by the fine hairs which are present in our passage, nasal passage. You all of you know that you are having some hairs in your nose. These hairs which are present in our nose is also called cilia. So what is the function of these hairs? they filter the air, because whatever the air you are breathing, that may contain some carbon particles, right? When you clean your nose, you'll find sometimes your mucus is black, right? Why it is black in color? Because it has trapped all the impurities from your air which you have breathed in, right? Now this passage along with the hair contain a mucus. Mucus is a sticky fluid which is present in our nose. So when this hairs filter the air, the impurities which have gone through the air in our nostrils, that in nasal passage, that will be trapped, that will be sticked to the mucus, right? When this air get filtered, it become warm also, right? And now you know that warm air is always lighter than cold air. Now this warm oxygen air, it passes through the throat into the lungs. Now when it passes to the throat into the lungs, it passes to the windpipe, right? Now this windpipe is just like a balloon. As you know that when in the balloon, when there is no air, what will happen? You'll say, ma'am, the balloon will collapse. Yes, right. Suppose I'm talking about the same thing in our windpipe. If there is no air, what will happen? The windpipe collapse. But this not happens. If it collapses, you will not survive. But this not happens at all. Why this not happens? Because our windpipe is surrounded by rings of cartilage. These rings of cartilage ensure that the air passage does not collapse when there is no air. Right? You can mark this answer. Rings of cartilage are present in the throat. That is on the windpipe. I'll show in the diagram also. You can see here, these are the rings of cartilage. So this part is called trachea. Right? These rings of cartilage, what is the function of these rings of cartilage? And they ensure that air passage does not collapse when there is no air. Clear? Any doubt? If you have any doubt, you can ask when we are meeting in the class. Clear? Now, this is the first step of our respiratory, working of our respiratory system, that we breathe through nostrils, right? When we breathe through nostrils, in our nasal passages, the hair present filters the air, and mucus traps all the impurities, whatever the impurities have gone to our nose, right? And then this air passes to the throat. Throat means that trachea, this windpipe, right? And this windpipe is surrounded by rings of cartilage, which ensure that air passage do not collapse when there is no air. Now, second step, coming to the respiratory system. Now, this air from trachea comes to the bronchi. This is the bronchi part, bronchi to bronchioles. And these bronchioles, they have alveoli sac. You can see the structure of alveoli. This is just balloon-like structure. There are many. It is just like bunch of grapes, right? They are very fine. They are very delicate, right? Clear? Now, while breathing in, what we'll do? We will lift our ribs. ऊपर को हम अपनी छाती को उठाते हैं. We lift our ribs. When we lift our ribs, why we are lifting our ribs? To increase the surface area in our chest cavity, right? While lifting our ribs, we increase the surface area of chest cavity. Why we are increasing the surface area? Now question is, why we are increasing the surface area? We are increasing the surface area to reduce the pressure, right? If the pressure is reduced inside, then what will happen? The pressure of oxygen outside the body is more. When there is a difference in the pressure, as you know that the osmosis also, in osmosis also we have studied, or in diffusion, we are talking now, we talk about diffusion, not osmosis. And diffusion, the particles move from higher concentration to lower concentration. So when the pressure of oxygen is more outside, it rushes to the lungs through windpipe, right? It comes to the bronchioles and bronchioles to alveoli. Now your alveoli is full of oxygen. Clear? Again I am speaking this. When we breathe in, we lift our ribs. Why we are lifting our ribs? To increase the surface area so that more and more oxygen can enter in our alveoli, because the concentration of oxygen is less in all alveoli and it is more in outside of the body. Clear? Now, when this alveoli are full of oxygen, the blood vessels which are in the contact of these alveoli, they have more concentration of carbon dioxide. Clear? They have more concentration of carbon dioxide. Now, you can see here the blood brings carbon dioxide from the rest of the body to release in the alveoli. Now, this carbon dioxide is going to release in the alveoli, and at the same time the oxygen goes to the blood vessels and carbon dioxide come to the alveoli. Now, when we are breathing out, our diaphragm gets expand, and we are reducing the area of chest cavity, right? And then when we reduce, the pressure will increase inside. At that time, the oxygen goes to the blood vessels and carbon dioxide comes to the lungs, which we throw out our mouth. This is how our respiratory system works. Now, I have marked here question number 10. That is of a fourth question of your page 105. How are the lungs designed in human beings to maximize the area of exchange of gases? As I have told you, we are having ballonized structure called alveoli, right? So you can read from here. Within the lungs, the passages divide into smaller and smaller tubes, which finally terminate into balloon-like structures, which are called alveoli. So in small area, you are having numbers of many alveoli, right? The alveoli provide a surface area where the exchange of gases can take place, right? And these the walls of the alveoli, they contain an extensive network of blood vessels. That is how our lungs is designed. Clear? So you can write in your notebook from here also. Clear? Next. Now, I have discussed you about the exchange of gases. At the same time, the carbon dioxide come to the lungs from the rest of the body, and oxygen goes to the blood vessels and then to the different parts of the body. But this during breathing cycle, right? It will take some time. So what is, if it take more time, what will happen? Do our lungs collapse? No. I have given you question number in your notes. Wait, I'll tell you. 11th question. What do you mean by residual volume of air? Wait, I'll write here. I'll do this correction also. Wait. Now, 11th question. What do you mean by residual volume of air? You can see in your book. Wait, I'll shift this page. Okay. During the breathing cycle, you can mark from here, when the air is taken in and let out, the lungs always contain a residual volume of air. Why it contains residual volume of air? As I told you now, that when the exchange of gases takes place, it will take some time. Though it is less than a second, but still it will take some time. So there is sufficient time if it contains some amount of oxygen in the lungs, right? So it prevents the collapsing of the lungs, because it will give you the time for exchange of gases, and that the lungs, when the lungs contain the amount of air, that is called residual volume of air. So that there is a sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. That means what happened, what I want to say. What do you mean by residual volume of air? It is important question. Residual volume of air means the lungs contain some amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide, so that it will give the sufficient time for the exchange of gases, right? So that is the about our respiratory system. Now, as you know that the exchange of gases takes place through diffusion. But when the body size of the oxygen, now coming to the 11th question. But when the body size of the animal is large, this diffusion process is sufficient? No. It cannot give the oxygen to all parts. It cannot deliver the oxygen to all parts of the body. So how the oxygen will go to all parts of the body? You know that our blood contain red blood cells, right? And this red blood cells contain a respiratory pigment that is called hemoglobin. This hemoglobin, though it has very high affinity for oxygen, but still it carry oxygen to the different parts of the body, right? So along with diffusion, from diffusion the oxygen goes to the lungs, and lungs to the blood, and from blood this pigment carries the oxygen to the different parts of the body, right? And this hemoglobin, it is and the carbon dioxide can also dissolve in hemoglobin. So as you know that we breathe out carbon dioxide. How the carbon dioxide comes in the blood? Through hemoglobin only. This hemoglobin takes the carbon dioxide and throughout from our body through the lungs. Clear? So this is also an important question. How is the oxygen reach to all parts of the animal if the size of the animal is large? Clear? Have you marked these answers in your book? If not, please mark these answers. I have given you assignment also, and I told you all the answers. Now, come to I have marked something in your do you know me? It is though it is not important for examination, but you should know that the alveolar surface, if we spread out, it covers about 80 meters square of area. That much area it covers, and it is present in small surface area of our lungs. If, as I told you, the diffusion is not sufficient, right? From diffusion, the oxygen will not reach to the all parts of the body, and that is why our hemoglobin works for that. If the oxygen has to move from diffusion only, do you know that it will take 3 years for a molecule of oxygen to get to our toes from our lungs? So what will you say from this? That hemoglobin is playing a very significant role in our body. Clear? So with this, I have completed the topic respiration. I hope you will follow properly. You will listen again, and again. It's very easy topic. It's very important, not only from the examination point of view. It is for you also. We should know about our body.